What's up, family? If it's your first time checking out the show, let me know what city, what state you're coming in from. If you're outside of the U.S., let me know what country you're representing. Right now, family, in the building, I got Adia Jones. Before I start talking with Adia, who is a candidate for district attorney in Harris County. Harris County covers Houston and surrounding areas. Family, I need you to smash up the likes, smash up the likes, smash up those likes, put it in their face, especially if they're an opponent of Adia's. Put it in their face, let them know what time it is. Make sure you share this video. Make sure you put it in their face, smash up the likes. I'm gonna talk to Adia, then I'm gonna open up the floor to your questions or your statements. I'm gonna start in the super chat. If you wanna skip the line, family, you can get into the super chat. Otherwise, I am going to check after the super chat. I'm going to go into the regular chat and I'll get your comments, as many as I can. All right, family. Look, I want to welcome a woman of integrity on the show. Adia Jones is a former prosecutor who is running for district Democratic in the Democratic primary against incumbent Kim Ogg. She said she is going to prosecute less crime than Kim Ogg, the person who ran on a platform of prosecuting less crime. Adia don't seem to think that she's doing a good enough job. Adia used to work for Kim Ogg in the Harris County District Attorney's Office. She is one of the candidates who has challenged the notorious AntiCop Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg, and she is now in the primary hunt for to be Harris County's next district attorney. Adia, you are one of the many candidates who are challenging Kim in this March 2020 primary. Why are so many Democrats challenging an incumbent? I need to know that. This is very interesting to me because typically incumbents go unchallenged by members of their party.
Right. Yeah, for decades. You know, what we saw was that, and I was the first challenger that actually got out there and started to run against our current district attorney, which is, like you said, DA Kim Ogg. But the reason I started running against her is because she made a lot of promises in 2016 when she initially got into office about reforming the criminal justice system. She said that even though she was not a minority, that she would take certain positions like decriminalizing marijuana and other offenses that have been known to target people because of their race or ethnicity, and that she would support such things as cash bail reform. But when she got into the office, not too long after she got into the office, I was still working in the office at that time, and she actually backtracked on a lot of those promises. And not only just backtracked, she actually, you know, almost took us back to the time where it was worse than it was when we were under the Republican regime. So not only did she, you know, not keep her promises, she actually made it worse than what it had previously been. And we can talk about some of those things in particular more specifically. But that's why I ran.
That's the segue to my next question. I was just going to ask you specifically, what are some of those broken promises?
Yeah, so one of the first things is, you know, her big thing, or one of her big platforms was decriminalizing marijuana. And when I tell people the difference between decriminalization and diversion, they're two completely different things. So when we talk about decriminalization, that means absolutely no strings attached, no type of punishment. That means no courses that you pay for, no picking up trash, no nothing. There's nothing. That means you're just not going to accept the charges. But what she in fact did was something called a diversion program. But what it created was a system where it was still targeting minorities, where it was still targeting people who did not have the money. And if they did not pay $150 within 90 days of receiving a citation for possessing marijuana, there was an arrest warrant that would be issued for them on the back end. So even though they weren't arrested on the front end, what a lot of people weren't seeing was that those same individuals, predominantly Black and Hispanic individuals, were being arrested on the back end 90 days later if they were not able to make a $150 payment. So one of the biggest issues and the things that I wrote an open letter to our current DA months ago where we said, possession of marijuana charges, we are 6 times more likely as Black people to be arrested, convicted, and charged with possession of marijuana than white counterparts, even though it's used at the exact same rate. We have a 40% murder solve rate in Harris County. So if we want to talk about keeping our community safe, prosecuting possession of marijuana charges just is not it. And then we had 2 officers who reached their fingers in a young lady's vagina looking for a piece of marijuana that they never found, that our previous district attorney, Devin Anderson, had actually indicted the officers or held them accountable, charged them with doing that. But when Kim Ogg came in the office 2 years later, she went in and made sure that those cases against those 2 officers were actually dismissed. So when we talk about keeping our community safe, who is she keeping the community safe from? And who are we focusing on? So that was one of the big things. The next thing is the cash bail reform. We know that most people were being held in jail before being convicted of any type of crimes just because they could not afford to get out. And I always tell people 77 to 80% of the people that were sitting in jail for misdemeanor offenses were in there for nonviolent action. So most of them were in there for drug-related offenses, or because they were too poor to get out, or because they were suffering from mental health issues. And our current district attorney was the only Democrat to actually oppose cash bail reform. And what she stated was that she did not trust the judgment of the predominantly 19 African American judges that had come in, and she didn't trust the judgment of the new judges that were in to make sure that the people who were in fact released before being convicted would not commit any additional crimes.
Okay, so yeah, if what you're saying is correct,
yeah,
I guess to me then it makes sense that she would ask for $7.4 million in a budget for more prosecutors, because in my mind, if Kim Ogg is running on an prosecution type platform where we're going to get rid of all of these thousands and thousands of petty crime that people are getting convicted for, if you're going to run on that type of platform, why is it necessary to add more prosecutors? Shouldn't the case load be getting lighter instead of heavier?
Yeah, exactly. And it was much more than $7.4 million that she actually asked for. She asked for $20 million for 102 new prosecutors.
Where does that $4 million number come from?
So what she started doing was breaking the request down. So she asked for the $20 million about 3 to 5 times from the county commissioners. Once it was rejected every single time by our Democratic county commissioners. And when she realized that she was not going to get that $20 million, what she started doing was breaking it down into smaller chunks. And so that way she'll just keep asking for numbers until they add up to the $20 million, just not at one time. And that's just, and that's been a habit of everything she's done, doing things very underhanded. A lack of integrity, a lack of transparency is par for the course for her.
Our criminal justice system, you said, can't solve problems like drug addiction and poverty.
Right. Yeah, so we had this thing called the war on drugs, and if anybody's watching, they were familiar. It started around the 1980s. And previous to that, our system was used somewhat for what it was designed to work for, and that's keeping our community safe from people who are committing some type of violent action. But what we had a system when we started this failed war on drugs that started under Reagan. Our jail population went from around 200,000 people to around 2 million in just less than 2 decades. And what we're finding is that we cannot arrest or prosecute or convict our way out of people who are drug addicted, because all it does is it continues to cycle them in and out of jail. Once they go to jail, they're still they're still drug addicted. A lot of them receive no treatment. So they come back out a couple days later and they're more unstable than they were when they went in. Same thing with mental health issues and poverty. Those are issues that cannot be solved in a jail cell, or keeping people caged, or I guess exposing them to criminal charges. It actually makes them less safe. It makes us less safe. It makes them less able to get any type of housing, educational assistance. A lot of times, jobs. If they want to be entrepreneurs, they're not able to get loans. So these are things that we're finding. The incarceration rates are going up, but it's not solving anything at all. And what our platform is talking about is actually refocusing what the criminal justice system is used for, and saying, hey, let's ask for resources to get these people the help that they truly need, which is drug rehabilitation, mental health treatment, and things that are really going to get at the root of the crime, and solve the underlying issues. And incarceration is not the answer for those nonviolent offenses.
It seems to me like that's common sense, right?
Yeah.
Why
Yes.
do you think that Americans, and I mean it's not just the politicians, because we know why
Right.
they do it, but why are Americans so bloodthirsty, for a lack of a better word,
Hmm.
with punishing people as opposed to rehabilitation programs or preventative programs?
Yeah. So I actually think that's a couple of things. Number one, we have to look at what our criminal justice system was rooted in. And I always tell people, I'm like, it really developed after slavery. So once slavery ended, what we had an evolution of slavery by another name, which is our criminal system. Where after slavery, we had the black codes, we had the Jim Crow laws, where they would criminalize black people for being out past curfew, for not having a job. And then at that point, their service or their labor was then used by the government for free, in order to profit, for private corporations to profit off of them. And we see the same thing now. We still have a prison industrial complex, where we see people and prisoners, inmates are working for little to no money, but the supplies and the goods that they build and use are sold in our free markets for like a significant amount more. We have privatized jails, which Harris County uses right now. We've been at max capacity at our Harris County jail for decades, and most people don't know that we actually send our inmates or people that are charged with offenses out to a privatized prison out in Louisiana. So that's one of the things. Another thing is we have a lot of fear mongering. When we talk about like good press, good media, good places to look to get your information, most of those largely owned networks are 99% of them are owned by 1 or 2% of the population. Unless we have stations, independent stations like you with, No More Talk, or what we're looking at right now with what you started, you're unfiltered, untied, not beholden to anything. We have a lot of people that believe that everybody's out there raping, robbing, killing, and stealing, because that's what we see when we look at television shows that perpetuate, stereotypes of black men, Hispanic women, black women, and then of course other white counterparts that are in certain socioeconomic statuses. So it's a double fold. It's a compilation of racism, fear mongering, inequality. We want to always have a caste system, right? People always want to fight to be on top. So that means someone has to be on the bottom. And again, this is why I call it slavery by another name. It's really just a disgusting formation of the slave system. It's just reaching into different ethnicities now. And what we're trying to do is create a fair, just, and equitable system, and rebuild a system that is really should be focused on keeping our communities safe and not just locking people up because they're black or Hispanic or black or brown, or because they simply can't just afford to get out of jail.
One thing that I see all the time, like I see the whole judicial system
Mhm.
as more of a hustle than it is as, and then I see it being an entity to serve and protect the people, right?
Right.
That's the way I look at it like it's a hustle, and there's millions of dollars being made every single time a person is charged with a crime.
Right.
So So well, not every single time a person is charged with a crime, you know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
That's millions of dollars being made when people are charged with crimes, And so if, let's say they make a law that says you can't have anything hanging from your rearview mirror, like I covered a story before this one. I covered a story of the dirty cop who gave a guy a constructed view ticket because he had a bulb hanging from his rearview mirror.
Yeah.
The cop was just harassing him. He was clearly harassing the guy, but he had to make up something. So, hey, you can't have, he looked before the guy said, well, what you stop me for? And so the cop looks in his car, goes like, looking around. He said, you can't have stuff hanging from your rear view. He just had to make up something. So the way I look at it is that, let's say they stopped today, let's say they stopped convicting people, charging people of crimes of obstructed view, of something that's hanging from your rear view mirror inside of your car. If they get rid of that charge, they have to replace it with something else because now it's a revenue stream. Those revenue streams pay bills. They pay for employees, city employees. They pay the mayor's salary, the commissioner's salary, the prosecutor's salary, cops' salaries, right? They pay for roads and transportation and airport facilities, all kinds of stuff, stadiums.
Right.
If they cut off a revenue, they're always talking about budgets, how hard it is to keep up with the budgets, and every year it's a budget issue. It's always about money. So if they get rid of money over here, and the city is already tight, and they're trying to make more money every year like a business, how do they replace those funds? Without making something else illegal?
Yeah, so I want to answer that in two ways. Number one, you brought up a good point. I always tell people there are hundreds of thousands of laws that are on the books. One of the things as a district attorney, I have absolutely no jurisdiction over the laws, but what we do have jurisdiction over is which laws are enforced and who they're enforced against, right? So even if we got rid of saying, hey, this obstruction of the mirror, you will see some crazy things. I've seen some crazy things as a former prosecutor where people are literally stopped while they're jaywalking. And searched, and that's how they found possession of some type of drugs on them. And predominantly, most of those people are Black or brown. And so, what we want to make sure is that we are looking at a decline to prosecute list. So for certain offenses that we have seen that have disproportionately been enforced against Black and brown people simply because of the color of their skin or their ethnicity, those are things that we're looking to decline to prosecute. So we have already started creating a list that we would be enforcing within our first 100 days. Unless there's some type of exception, our prosecutors would be required to go receive supervisor approval to accept those charges. So that's one thing. So to answer your question, you're right. Even if you get rid of one, there's always going to be something else on the books that someone can enforce, and enforce it on the basis of someone's race or ethnicity. So that's one way we are thinking we're working to combat that. Another way we intend to combat that is by creating a link that is transparent, that's accessible to the public, where we can see which crimes are in fact enforced against people when we see certain violations. I mean, if you think, again, jaywalking, how many times do we jaywalk? I mean, literally, we'll see officers jaywalk. I'll see prosecutors jaywalk. We'll be on lunch break, you're jaywalking. It's not even something that would ever cross your mind that it's illegal, but it is. And it's just a matter of who do we enforce it against? Exactly. And exactly. And so we are focusing on tracking those types of crimes and those things that are enforced against certain people just because of their monetary status, and then eliminating those things. And the second thing I have to say is when we talk about a budget, people so easily throw in the word budget when it's something that they want to, it's an easy catch-all for saying, oh, we can't do it, it's not in the budget. Where are you going to get the money for? Oh, Audie, at first in our campaign, Willie, you remember, I mean, I think you were one of the first supporters, but people laughed at our campaign, like, what do you intend to do? And now we're at the point in our campaign, people aren't laughing anymore, especially not our opponents.
And you just got Bernie Sanders endorsement.
We just got Bernie Sanders endorsement. We just got United States Representative Ayanna Pressley is endorsed. Texas Organizing Project. Many organizations that previously supported the incumbent are now backing our campaign. But what I tell people is a budget is a moral code. It's a moral code on a piece of paper that can easily be changed. So if we can literally look at something and say, oh, no problem, we'll give $7.4 million for new prosecutors when you can't even keep the ones that you have, when you've shown that you have the highest turnover among district attorneys in the history of Harris County district attorneys, we can absolutely shift money to resources that will help people get back on their feet. So again, it's just a matter of changing what's written on that moral document and reallocating funds from one place to another. It's not a matter of taxing higher or pursuing more crimes or more convictions. It's a matter of shifting those funds from one source to another. And I always tell people right now, we spend $130 million of our taxpayer dollars every year running the Harris County Jail. That's the largest mental health facility in the state of Texas. So if you tell me, we're looking to decline to prosecute, we're looking at pre-arrest diversion programs that are going to keep people out of incarceration, or at least make incarceration a last resort. If the person is a threat to public safety or a flight risk, obviously we have to look at incarceration. But other than that, it would be a last resort. So you're telling me, we can take some of that $130 million and focus it on getting people the help that they truly need.
Right. Family is not joining us. I am talking to Audia Jones. She is one of the candidates who is challenging notoriously anti-cop Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg in the Democratic primary. The problem that with the anti-cop name is for Audia and many of the people that are also in the hunt for that district attorney job, is that they don't believe that that Kim Ogg is delivering on that promise because she has allowed some cops who they believe that should be prosecuted to go unprosecuted. Audia, speaking, you was just talking about how it's many of the, you can't control the laws. You have no control over the laws, but you can't control who gets prosecuted and who doesn't get prosecuted.
Absolutely.
In that regard, what do you think about what's going on in Chicago with the Jussie Smollett case, where you have State's Attorney Kim Foxx being pressured, and she's up for re-election right now. She's the incumbent, but she faced a lot of criticism when she decided that to recuse herself from the Jussie Smollett case. She didn't even prosecute it. She stepped away and she allowed her office to prosecute. But because of that, because of her decision to step away, to recuse herself, because she was a friend of Jussie Smollett's family, they're saying that somehow she used her position, her influence to get rid of the charges against Jussie Smollett, the original charges. As a Black female who is, a Black woman who is bidding herself now to become a prosecutor, you'll find yourself in the same shoes as Kim Foxx, if everything turns out right and you become the nominee. Well, first you have to become the Democratic nominee, then you'll go to the Republican. But if, let's say, you get past the Democratic, you are the Democratic nominee, everything goes right, these people out here that's listening right now go out and vote for you like they should. Tomorrow, today is what? Today's
Monday.
Okay, tomorrow, it's going down tomorrow. So family, you got to get out there and vote. You can't just sit on your butt and complain and talk about why this ain't happening or that ain't happening. You got complete control right now. You can go in there and make a difference right now. You can have somebody at least that that you're familiar with, that you can relate to. You can go in there and vote for them tomorrow. Right now, you can go in, if you're in the Harris County area, go in there tomorrow and vote for Audia Jones. I guarantee you she's gonna get in there and fight for you. I know her, I can vouch for her character. So my point is that I do believe that Kim Foxx is facing all of this criticism because she is a Black prosecutor, a Black woman who used her position to give a Black man a break, not a Black man who did something like so egregious that somebody got killed, or he didn't rape anybody, he didn't kill anybody, he didn't blow up any federal buildings. He staged a fake attack against himself, and he gave the city $10,000. He forfeited his bail that we talked about earlier, and he gave it to the city and said, hey, you know what, y'all can have it, y'all can have the 10,000. I'm free to go. Everything's cool. Many of the people who look at prosecutors, Black prosecutors, with a prying eye, who don't give Black prosecutors the same type of consideration and respect them and their position, pretty much like they did with Obama. They don't respect the position if a Black person is in it, especially a Black woman. So Kim is dealing with all of that because she is a Black woman and she exercised her power like DAs all over the country does every day. This is a very minor case, but they've made it out of a major deal. How do you expect, once you get in, to be able to deal with that type of pressure?
Yeah, I mean,
is it pressure at all to you?
I mean, it's always going to be something. I think one of the things I don't look at this as an easy job. Once we get in the seat, I don't think it's going to be an easy position. I don't take it for granted. I will say, as having lived and being born and living in the skin of a Black person, a Black woman, my entire life, this is something we see on a consistent basis, right? And and especially when we're talking about our legal system, I've in the beginning, I told people, I know it's sometimes difficult for people to swallow when they would see me in the beginning. Like I said, people don't even have the audacity to really laugh or say anything, like, what do you think your chances are at this point? But what we've seen is that I don't, and I would assume, Kim Foxx doesn't look like the stereotypical district attorney. When we look at district attorneys across the country, 95% are white males. And on the flip side, 96 to 97% of people that are incarcerated or facing charges typically look like us, right? So it's something where it's like, okay, African American women's as a whole make up, I believe it's 0.1% of district attorneys across the country. And so, I think when we see change, it's always going to be difficult for people to see. I always tell people, at one point, slavery, it was difficult for people to say, we're going to see Black and brown people out of chains. There'll be savages. What's going to happen? So with change, it's always going to be some pushback, and it's always going to be somebody has something to say or prejudgment because of media, or because of bad media outlets. So yes, I expect it. It's something I've seen already where people try, again, the fear mongering tactic. Oh, they hate X, Y, Z. And what I always tell them is, look, I'm pro community, I'm pro safety, but I'm pro equality. And that's the thing. You think it's a common sense type approach where it's, let's treat everybody fairly equally. But we have a lot of people that will use terms like, oh, you're a criminal, or criminal justice reform is just another code word for letting everybody out of jail. But when we look at the numbers, and we're keeping everything fact and statistics and evidence based, when we're looking at numbers that show 77% of people that are sitting in jail right now before even being convicted of anything are in there for nonviolent offenses, when we see that 72% of people that are sitting in the Harris County jail right now are Black and brown, when we see that there are so many correlations to race, and socioeconomic status and past trauma, that's something that we cannot avoid any longer, to say that we do not have a racially biased criminal system.
Right.
And when we have a racially biased criminal system, we know people are going to be racially biased against individuals that are seeking to change things. And you know, what we have right now is a DA that I've worked for her personally and had dealt with several internal issues of racism. I always tell people, I'm like, you can pull my record. When I resigned from the office, I actually attached a litigation lawsuit letter based in racial discrimination within the office, that nothing was done by our current district attorney. In fact, we have a higher level management that's in there right now that our current district attorney is aware of. And she reduced the scores on evaluations of Black prosecutors to keep them from getting promoted. And she still works there. And so if we see stuff like that inside of the office, I mean, what do we expect to see in the community?
Yeah, well, I know prosecutors in that office. I know Black prosecutors who work in that office.
Right.
You know, it ain't. Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
It's way worse than anybody could imagine. You would think that because you're on the inside, that maybe they'll treat you like one of us. You're one of us.
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
they're looking at you like the enemy. Here's a thing that I think about a lot. In my mind, if I saw that the prosecutions were levied across the board, and it was even,
Right.
having a Black prosecutor wouldn't be that big of a deal to me. Like if I saw, like if I walked into courtrooms and I saw equal amount of white folks like I see when I walk in these courtrooms, because when I walk in courtrooms, especially these JP courts,
Oh yeah.
all I see 99.9% are Black and Hispanics. That's like, well, I'm like, man, Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the country. Where are all the white folks? I can't find a white person nowhere. And I recently was in court on some tickets about a week ago, a month ago. I saw white people. So if I walked into a courtroom and I saw the courtroom, is it called the gallery, where the people sit at?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
If I saw the gallery was as diverse as the city, I would be like, wait a minute, what's she trying to run now? We need to keep such and such, man. She's doing good. Like, I don't care about nothing about nobody Black coming in. Man, everything's working out cool over here. I would not be, maybe it'll make me proud, but it wouldn't make me concerned. I mean, it wouldn't get me excited like we're gonna see change and it's better for us to have somebody who's relatable. But here's the thing, that how do you address white people who look at you and think fear? They see you and they think that somehow if Black people are represented or at least considered and given the same consideration as whites or anybody else, and if a Black person came in and offered equality to Black people, that somehow they're losing if Black people are winning. How do you express to those white constituents out there, the people that make those white people out there that may be listening right now to the program, that they don't have to fear you as a Black person. They don't have to fear you, that you're gonna look out for not just Black people, but their interests.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something that we've done since the very beginning of our campaign. And I think someone put it best. They were like, Audie is the unifying candidate. I've always been very, very clear at when I talk about safety and equality for all of us, that's who I'm talking about. Every last person that lives in Harris County, regardless of your race, your age, whether you have a title, whether you have a badge, whether you have money, whether you don't, whether you are undocumented, whether you are a citizen, we need to protect everybody that's in Harris County. And that's what we've stood for from the very beginning. So, one of the things I tell people is, when we say an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, that's what we've seen. And that's what continues to be perpetuated So I'm not saying just because I'm Black, I'm going to look out for the Black community, because what we've seen is other elected officials, and I'm sure I don't have to call any names, Willie, and we have had conversations about that, but doesn't mean that, we've had people that look like us that don't do what's in our best interest. But when we're looking at the numbers and we're looking at what our criminal injustice system has done across the board, yes, initially it was focused solely on Black and brown people, but what we've seen is, again, like I've said, it's stretched across all racial ethnicities, and it's really become a caste system based in socioeconomic status, where we see people that are Black and Hispanic are still being targeted, but now we see our white counterparts that, because they are drug addicted, they have the opioid crisis going on right now, where we see a significant amount of white people that are victims of the opioid crisis, and they are essentially being targeted by our criminal system. We see people that are being locked in jail before being convicted, and can't get out or can't afford good representation because, again, they are part of that lower socioeconomic status, but they're white. So we are seeing these repercussions that initially were targeted at Black and brown people. But when we fight against these things, we're fighting against these things for the betterment of every last one of us, again, regardless of their color, because it's affecting every last one of us, regardless of our color. And so that's what we stand on, and that's what I've always stood for. A human being is a human being. The problem is we have these people in these seats, especially our current district attorney, that aren't seeing people that are Black and brown as human beings. So when you have a system, or you have leadership or a lack of leadership, that doesn't see everybody as a human being, but now you have a person that's running for this position, such as myself, who has been exposed and has lived around and has godparents who are Irish, and my family has done a very good job of making sure that I look at everybody as being a human being, regardless of their race or ethnicity. That's exactly what I'm bringing to the table. My father's a Vietnam veteran. My husband did 2 tours of duty to Iraq. I played Division I basketball with just about everybody, from people from Australia, within the United States and outside of the United States. And the problem is, now we're getting somebody in this position, and we have people that are running across the country that see everybody as being human being, and that's what I bring to the table. Everybody is a human being. That is someone's child. That's someone's brother, sister, mother, father, uncle, aunt. So maybe to you it might not be a direct effect, but we have to be more empathetic to understand that this is somebody's child. And we don't want to wait till we get in a position where it's affecting our family directly to be like, oh man, now it's time to vote for somebody that's standing for what she's standing for.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Well, family, I want to check out some of your comments right now. If you got any questions for Adia, fire away. I'm gonna open this floor up for a few minutes and let y'all go at it and see. Give me some questions. It's got to be good now. If you got
Mhm.
something stupid to say, think that for your significant other. Let me. If you got something, if you're saying something worthwhile, man, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. I'm like Dr. Boyce Watkins says, this is a forum for intelligent people.
Okay.
Intelligent. Give me something intelligent. Give me an intelligent question.
Right.
Let's see. Ozzy G says she's speaking of true justice.
Yeah.
What do you say to what do you say to Erskine Ramsey, who says she can't change the laws, only reinforce them?
Exactly. And so, I mean, I think he's exactly right. But when we look at things like the documentary on Netflix about When They See Us, and the power that prosecutors truly have, literally in Harris County, the district attorney is single-handedly the most powerful actor and the gatekeeper in our justice system. And what I tell people is, when I say they're the gatekeeper, they decide which charges to accept and which charges to reject. So at the end of the day, even though we have a legislature that determines the laws are nothing more than writing on a piece of paper until they're enforced. So when I say really, the enforcement of the law is what makes the difference between whether someone goes to jail, whether someone stays out, whether there's racial bias and prejudice that is within the enforcement of the law, whether rogue police officers are held accountable, whether rogue prosecutors are held accountable for misconduct, whether people get off just because of connections, or who they are or who they know. That makes all the difference, especially when it's directly affecting your family and your wallet. So
Yeah. So Joshua says, how do you plan to change the prosecution load for petty crimes to focus on larger crimes such as white collar crimes?
yeah, no, that's a great question. So again, one of the things that we said in the very beginning is that we have already started to develop our decline to prosecute list. We will be declining to prosecute possession of marijuana, so we will no longer be prosecuting marijuana charges. That will take a significant load off of our books. So whenever you hear a prosecutor or a district attorney complain about caseloads, they are 1,000% in control of that caseload. And we're looking at declining to prosecute charges like resisting arrest, standalone resisting arrest charges. Literally, if you are not even committing any type of criminal activity, but you are stopped by a law enforcement officer and they put their hand on you and you go to pull away because you weren't doing anything wrong, at that point you can literally be charged with resisting arrest. And a lot of times we see either it's bad judgment, poor judgment, or again, people are human beings. So if they're just having a bad day or are under a significant amount of stress or trauma that hasn't been treated, those are things that we've seen a misuse and abuse of authority and power. So we will be declining to prosecute standalone resisting arrest charges. We're looking at declining to prosecute sex work, because we are the #1 human trafficking hub in the United States. So when we talk about having scarce law enforcement resources and scarce prosecutorial resources, let's focus on things that are making our communities less safe. Let's focus on violent offenders, not people that are strictly addicted to drugs, because again, incarcerating them does not change any of that. It does not change any of that.
Well, we see that it works now that you have the opiate addiction.
Right.
You have the opiate epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
See now that so they can not prosecute you.
Oh, absolutely.
You're on drugs. They can't offer help. They can't offer preventative services. They can't help the family they can be kind and considerate, and they can have empathy for you if you're a drug addict, if they want to.
Correct.
So another question is, it says, let me see, let me check that out. Hold on. Okay, Brother B says, just respect the law enforcement officers and you won't have. Brother B is a dumbass.
No, and this is the thing. This is what I will always respect.
No, I got
okay. Okay.
They chunked themselves. I got to give it to them.
Okay, go ahead.
They chunked themselves. They got to get it. Brother B, how many times have you seen innocent people get accosted by the police, pulled over for no reason, harassed, stop walking down the street, just stop for no reason and harassed? These are the people that are not doing anything but minding their own business. I'm alluding to what Audia said moments ago, where you can easily find yourself with an resisting arrest charge by an officer who accosts you for no reason. You're not being suspected of a crime or anything. They just happens to stop and want to mess with you. And then next thing you know, you're like, hey man, why you pulling on me? Why you grabbing me? And bam, just like that, you got an resisting arrest charge. So brother, your mama should be embarrassed and your daddy should have pulled that. Go ahead, Audia.
And, one of the things I say is, what we will always support and what I always intend to support are good police officers, because I've worked with several good police officers, and I will always support good prosecutors. But what I will never support are bad police officers and those who misuse and abuse their authority. And I will never support bad prosecutors who misuse and abuse their authority. So, to put a blanket on everybody, there's always bad apples in every bunch, and there's always good ones. But we will never, I will never, it doesn't matter who he is. I will never support bad officers. So.
Why is it so hard for people to get that we're not against police officers, you know, like we're against bad police officers? Why is it so hard for them to get that? I understand why police officers get it, because they understand, like, because what they do, they hide behind the shield, they hide behind, you know, the badge, the gun, the protection, the union, and all of that, the uniform, they hide behind it. And they know that they can get away with a lot of stuff just because they have that uniform on. I understand why they understand what's going on. Why can't we do something about all these dummies? Can we put them in some type of mental institution? Can we, like the crazy people that don't get the basic stuff? Is there anything we can do? Can you do something as a prosecutor?
Yeah, I mean, one of our, what we intend to do is again, like we said, we're holding everybody accountable under the law. So when we talk about keeping the community safe, we mean everybody. That doesn't mean we're going to only keep you safe if you have a badge and a title, or that we are only going to keep you safe if you have a certain amount of money. So again, like I said, we will always support people that are doing the right things. And focus on the right goals. But if you are not doing the right things, we see so much fear mongering. It's a lot of fear mongering. When you hear people say anti-police, oh, they want to let all the criminals out, they're anti-police. Well, number one, most of these individuals, again, 77 to 90% of these people have never even been convicted of a crime. To call somebody a criminal before they've been convicted of anything in our country, under our laws, you're innocent until proven guilty. Even though we've had the judgment of the majority, where you're guilty until proven innocent, under the law, it's innocent until proven guilty. But it's a lot of fear mongering you'll hear when people say, well, you're just trying to hold, you're against cops. Well, no, I'm very supportive of police officers, and the ones who work with me know that, and I'm very supportive of good police officers. But there is no life, no person that's more or less important than the other. And when we talk about keeping the community safe, that's exactly what we intend to do under my administration. Everybody will be on the same accord, on the same page, and at the very minimum, people with badges, people with titles, people we've given more power and more authority to, at the very minimum, will be held accountable just like everybody else. And what we've seen is the opposite. They've been held less accountable.
That's what I'm saying. I think they should be held to a higher standard, and they should be prosecuted to a higher standard, because they took the oath. Like, I didn't take an oath. I'm just a regular old person. I commit a crime. Hey, man, I'm just a person, But if I go out there and take an oath and I betray the people's trust, it's like being a pastor and you out there fornicating and stealing and drinking and driving and all this stuff.
Taking advantage of your role.
You should be punished harshly. Like, people should, it shouldn't just be like, well, he's just a man. And no, if you take that oath and to guide the people and you abuse that authority, you should be held to a higher standard. Since you're held to a higher standard, otherwise in society, cops are held to a higher standard. Like, we give them the benefit of doubt. So with that benefit of doubt, with that trust, with that blind trust, should come a certain amount of honor. And when you betray that trust, when you dishonor your position, I think that you should be held to a higher standard. I know that's a conversation for later down the road. Right. But I'm just saying, I just feel like that they should be held to a higher standard. Family, I hope that this gave y'all some insight on what's going on with this race in Houston, and where Adia stands for the people. Adia Jones. It says Adia Jones for DA, but it should be Adia Jones for the people. You dig what I'm saying? Family, if you're just now checking it out, I just want to remind you that Adia Jones is running for district attorney in Harris County. The primaries are tomorrow. Tomorrow is the very last day to vote. You got to go vote. If you're in the Harris County area, you want a prosecutor with principles, somebody that stand for something, that's gonna ride for the people. Go out there and cast your vote for Audia Jones. Audia, where can the people reach you? What's your website? They want to give donations. I saw somebody in the chat asking about your website for donations. How do they?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit our website at www.audiajones, that's AUDIA Jones, JONES.com. You can follow us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Audia4DA. So it's AUDIA FORDA. And we will be out at the polls tomorrow from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you want to stop by and see me, for most of the day, I'll be at the metropolitan location. So please come out. Make sure you're. What'd you say?
What's the address for the metropolitan location?
That is a good question. I know it's on West Gray Street. So it's on West Gray Street.
Let me see.
Yeah.
Let me look it up right quick.
It's the Metropolitan Multipurpose Center.
Metropolitan Multipurpose. Let's see. That is on 1475 West Gray Street.
There we go. Yep, 1475.
West Gray Street.
Yep.
Come on out, family. I will be out there tomorrow.
Yep.
Come out, cast your vote for Audia. Take some pictures.
Yeah.
I'll be out there. I'm gonna take a few pictures and sign a few autographs.
Awesome.
And I'm gonna pass out some flyers and all kinds of stuff, man. I want to see Audia Jones as the next district attorney for Harris County. And thank y'all for tuning in, Audia. Thank you for sharing your insight.
Thank you. And thank you, Willie, for always being so supportive and getting a chance taking the chance to get to know me. And we're about to change this thing. So
absolutely. You're a real one. That's easy.
I appreciate that.
All right. No more talk.
Okay.